Hi, this is John Anthony. This is FTE 217, the week 7 assignment. Um, I'm just going to go start by clearing my workspace. It is clear. There's no live ammunition around. I do have my AR-15 here. No feed source. No magazine inserted. Clear and free. No live ammunition around. No other weapons around here locked up in the safe. I'm going to go over a couple things. There's 4 parts to this assignment. The first part is going to be reflect on when trigger work is necessary, discuss the problems with trigger work, and what constitutes improper trigger work. Honestly, I think trigger work is necessary when you are getting to the competition round and you are probably getting into honestly competition realm. When you're in a controlled environment and when you're using this firearm or using a firearm in a controlled environment with a directive, I wouldn't put it in a real world scenario of like me personally, carrying on law enforcement or carrying personal protection. Because once you start getting into working on triggers, and if it is done improperly or it's done to tolerances that are so minuscule or super light trigger pulls, then you get into the realm of accidental discharges. And obviously, if you're caring for protection, personal protection, and you have it on you, don't want to hurt yourself. Law enforcement, I carry a lot, run a lot of warrants, do stuff like that. Obviously, I don't want to carry this thing around as my secondary weapon, have it slung across my chest, and that thing is you don't know when it's going to go off. Um, some things other than that, going inside a rifle, messing with that no spec trigger. I mean, they are designed with those tolerances for those springs and those disconnectors. So I mean, outside of that, I would not touch a trigger and work that trigger. Now, if you want to get a trigger like a Timony or a drop in, Rise trigger or something, a Geisley, that's kind of, to me, that's completely different. Now, if you want a lighter trigger pull, follow up successions, become a faster shooter, or a single stage or a double stage trigger, I think that's completely different. You know, there were some things they could do with a pistol, taking out springs, heating them up, stretching them, cutting the coil off, something like that. I feel like once you start messing with the OEM stuff, stuff from the manufacturers, I feel like just bound to make a mistake and have an accidental discharge. Um, that being said, improper trigger work, stuff like that. Having someone that doesn't know what they're doing, oh yeah, I can line your trigger up, or I can do that. I think it's just like it's bound to happen and bound to mess it up and leave you into a world of hurt and probably some legality issues. The part 2, perform a detailed inspection of your AR and take what I'm looking for. I'm going to take this AR apart. I'll field strip it real quick. Obviously, you want to look for wear and tear. This thing has never been fired. But first thing we want to do, open this thing up. Open this thing up. Look at the trigger group, looking at everything in there, make sure everything's aligned, make sure everything's straight up, up and down. Make sure there's no springs bent, anything broken inside. You want to make sure everything functions as well. Make sure this doesn't go off on safe. When looking at your receiver, want to look at glass block. Want to look at your rail. Make sure it's not rotating on you. Making sure your gas block and your gas tube is on. Make sure your muzzle device is tightened. When you want to go inside the internals, kind of look at the star chamber in here. You want to look inside these teeth that aren't anodized. That metal is going to be softer than a lot of metal around here. You want to make sure it's not getting chewed up. You want to make sure it's not getting marred by your bolt when the locking process. You want to make sure your gas tube isn't bent going to the side, because that's going to produce a lot of malfunctions, a lot of reliability issues with the gas. Going with the bolt, anything that touches metal. Obviously, this is brand new. This is going to be start getting worn on the side. Make sure it's not warped, it's not torn, it's not broken. We'll look into the bolt. Make sure your teeth are correct. Make sure there's not chunks of your bolt carrier taken off. Make sure that your firing pin is is nice and straight. There's a couple things that you want to look at. Retaining pin, make sure it has a nice little angle on it. Firing pin is straight. Cam pin can move freely solely by itself, in and out. You don't want to make sure no carbon buildup. It's pieces taken off. You want to make sure everything looks like what it looks like when you put this thing together. And once you have that experience of putting this thing together, taking it apart, obviously going through this class, you know what your pieces are supposed to look like. Make sure these gas rings are nice installed and on correctly. So you just want to expect that. So when you're looking at a firearm doing cleaning process or takedown process, or you're looking at somebody else's rifle that is having a couple issues, you want to look at stuff like that, especially the parts that are getting worn and torn and that are getting, you can tell that are getting used or it's metal on metal contact. Part 3, check the safety system of the disconnector operation of the firearm. Obviously, in that part, the disconnector is going to be inside of here. You want to make sure that everything is hung up and everything has that positive engagement. You want to make sure your sharing your disconnector are positively engaged. Obviously, the trigger's not pulled. Obviously, if it's at this angle motion, that they are positively engaged and that the disconnector and the serial are good to go. I'm going to do a little tap. This hammer, making sure that there's like not a negative engagement or something that's going to throw it off and cause a safety issue. Obviously, that looks good. It is on safe. I'm going to switch it to fire. See if it does the same thing. See if it stays positively engaged and this disconnector is pretty good. It looks good. When you put this thing together, obviously there's going to be 2 hooks. This thing's going to make like a straight line, and you're literally bending it to get this to get this angle on the springs itself. So when they're like that, they're going to hook and they're going to stop. So when you look down there, you pull the trigger. It goes up like it's supposed to. When it's supposed to fire, it's going to be down there. You want to make sure you have that positive engagement down there. Now, disconnector. Let's watch it. Let's watch it hook back up here. Hopefully, it does. It does. Click. How it's supposed to. You can know some bad trigger. I think the last part is identifying bad trigger jobs. Let's see. Articulate what you believe is the easiest, most difficult parts of repairs and alterations on the AR platform. I was going to say, AR platforms are pretty modular. They're pretty. I don't want to say Lego-ish. I don't want to say these things are super easy to put together like for children or anything, but they're super modular and a lot of these pieces are like mix and match, and you can just have a combination of whatever you want. Whatever you build, whatever you want, your mission design, your workspace, whatever you're using for leisure, like you can tailor an AR-15 to yourself. Honestly, before I got into AR-15s, building them, I think triggers were the most, to me, were the most weird part of putting anything together. It would be gas blocks just because I didn't really know about them. I mean, I knew they were in the gun, but I just didn't know how to, take them apart or add them or anything. But triggers, it's just there's just so much like a safety. It could be a safety issue, safety concern. It could be you can work on somebody's gun and their trigger not go off or go off when it's not intended to, and I mean that can cause their safety. That can cause somebody else's safety. That can cause their life and get them into legal issues. And if you're working on guns professionally, who's going to go back to? They're going to ask where you get the work done. So I think the part mostly was going to be difficult to work on, or you got to make sure you know your stuff and you're doing it right. and you're taking your firearm to to get worked on, is the trigger job. Trigger jobs are super important, and literally, man, it's the heart of the gun. It's where everything starts, and it's where everything has to perform. If you don't have a trigger, I mean, you don't have a gun. With that being said, I think I hit all the topics in this week. I'm just gonna check real quick again. Yep, seems like I got everything. I will see you next week on the last week's assignment. Uh, Thank you for this journey with me, and you have a good one.